If you are hoping to visit Badlands National Park in South Dakota, this is the perfect video for you because today I'm going to walk you through everything you need to know to make this a successful trip and to get you started in the trip planning process. My name is Ash, and I'm a former park ranger and the founder of Dirt in My Shoes, and I just love this area of South Dakota. And so today I'm really excited to talk to you about Badlands. Badlands National Park is a park that I think a lot of people overlook or just are unsure of how to best plan their time to this national park because there is so much to do in this area. So I want to walk you through what's so cool about Badlands and the things that you'll want to know as you're planning your trip. My goal for this video is to help you feel extremely confident in the planning process so that you can make your dream trip a reality. First off, what's so cool about Badlands National Park? Badlands, actually, that's a type of rock formation. It's a formation that weathers and erodes very quickly. And so this park is constantly changing. And what's cool about it is you find these Badlands formations just in the middle of the prairie. And so a lot of the driving in this area and stuff, you're just looking at beautiful prairie land. And then you reach the edge of where everything is eroding. And it's just absolutely beautiful with these big spires and very interesting colors as these Badlands emerge. So it's really cool. It's very unique. This park has a lot of wildlife. We love seeing especially bighorn sheep and bison. That's really exciting. The other thing that's really cool about Badlands that a lot of people don't know is that this national park is a hotbed for fossils. There are so many fossils in this national park that, in fact, they encourage you to look for fossils as you're out hiking and exploring. And if you find anything, you can leave it where it is, take a picture, and go tell the rangers where you found it, and they will go investigate. Because regular, everyday visitors like us find fossils in this park pretty often. Okay, so let's take a look at the map of the area just to kind of get you oriented into what to expect as you're planning your trip. So coming up here, we have Rapid City, and this is the main city in the area. This is actually a really good place just to base your whole South Dakota Black Hills Badlands trip out of. You can stay here in Rapid City, and then you can kind of pop off to all these other really cool places. What a lot of people overlook when they're planning their trip to the Badlands is just not realizing that Badlands, you can see it over here, it's kind of the other direction from Rapid City than like Mount Rushmore and Jewel Cave and Custer and Wind Cave and all of that is over here. So if you plan to mostly stay over here at these sites for your trip, then you are quite far from Badlands still. It's not all together really close. It's close enough that you can see it all in one trip, but just keep that in mind, especially as you're planning to go to Badlands. Just realize it's a little bit further out of town. It takes a little bit longer to get out here, and it's not really by any of the other things that you're probably going to want to see when you're here. What I find really interesting about this is that the visitation numbers really correlate with that. So Mount Rushmore, for example, gets about 2.5 million visitors a year, whereas Badlands only gets about 1 million, which is still quite a bit for that park. But just so you're aware, like most people do plan their trips around seeing Mount Rushmore and all the stuff over there, and Badlands often can be an afterthought. But I'm hoping to change your mind on this because Badlands is incredible. It's definitely worth your time. And it does see less visitors than a lot of the other places in the Rapid City area. Okay, so let's talk about how to get to Badlands National Park and kind of how you're going to want to plan around this. Because as I go through this video, I do want to keep this in perspective of, knowing that you're probably going to spend a lot of time in the Black Hills as well. And so where does Badlands fit into this? If you go over to dirtinmyshoes.com, you'll see a ton of free articles about Badlands and helping you plan. I will link these in the video description below as well. But just to give you an idea of what you're probably going to want to do, So you have Badlands National Park over here, you have Rapid City over here, and the Rapid City Airport is just right here. And so it's actually really great if you're wanting to get out to Badlands, if you're wanting to get out to Mount Rushmore over here. That's probably going to be the airport you're going to want to fly into. Beyond that, you've got to go out quite far. We're in a pretty small, little area of the country out here. And so there are a couple of international airports out here. Sometimes when I'm planning a trip to the Rapid City area, but I know that I'm going to go somewhere else like Yellowstone or Rocky Mountain, then I might look into some of these airports that are further away. So for example, if I want to see Rocky Mountain National Park, maybe during the same trip, I might fly into Denver, go to Rocky Mountain right here. It's about 6 hours or so to drive up to the Rapid City area and get to everything up there. So it's maybe not super convenient. There is the airport right there in Rapid City that probably makes more sense for most people, but you can kind of connect your trip to other places in this area as well. So once you've made your plans to get to the Rapid City area, it's time to decide kind of what time of the year you're hoping to be here. And again, kind of keeping Badlands lumped in with all the other stuff you're probably going to want to do in this area. Summer really is probably the best time to try to make this trip. The problem with summer in the Badlands is it does get much hotter in this area of South Dakota than it does in the higher elevations of the Black Hills. So if you're going to Mount Rushmore and stuff, it's going to be pretty nice and wonderful temperatures. Summer's really nice in that area. You go down to the lowlands of Badlands and it's like, it starts pushing 90 degrees plus. It does get pretty hot. It looks totally different. The scenery, the flora, the fauna, everything is totally different in the Badlands than it is in the Black Hills. And so you are going to have those temperature discrepancies as well. The problem with planning your South Dakota trip earlier, like before in the spring or later in the fall, is that while the temperatures and the weather usually is okay in the Badlands, that's when you'll start hitting more snow and ice and things in the Black Hills. And so you've kind of got to balance that if you're hoping to do everything in one trip. And so, like I said, usually because I know I'm probably going to be spending more time in the Black Hills than I will at the Badlands, I will typically go in the summer and just when I'm in Badlands, know that the weather is probably going to be a little bit harsh. If you want to go during the off season, if you really don't want to be there in the summer, then I would say aim for May so that you can still be there when most things are open at most places. You go earlier than that, you can get some really unpredictable weather. You'll encounter some closures there and stuff too. And so I usually will do May if I want to go before the summer or September if I want to go after. Once you get pushing into October, again, that's when you'll start getting some snow and colder temperatures up in the Black Hills. It's usually still pretty nice in Badlands, but again, if you're wanting to do both, you may not be too excited about the super cold temperatures in the Black Hills. My favorite month for visiting all of these places is probably September. It's kind of the sweet spot where you still have the good weather, but the smaller crowds, you're avoiding those big summer months. So if you can aim for that, that's great. If not, just go sometime during the summer and it will be fine. You'll have a lot of fun. You'll be able to get to everything. You may just have to be a little more prepared for some harsher temps in Badlands itself. What's really cool about Badlands National Park is that they actually do work really hard to keep everything open pretty much year round. And so the roads are plowed as quickly as possible. You can visit at almost any time of year and still have a great experience. And so just make sure, as with any national park, you're going to want to check the current updates on the National Park Service website for this park, just to make sure you catch any last minute things. Construction, you'll hit some construction during the summer months. If you go in the off season, then there could be some temporary road closures if a big storm blows through. You'll just want to keep tabs on that. If you want any help keeping up with the current conditions in the park and how it should affect how you're going to see the park, check out my South Dakota National Parks itinerary. I will keep it updated for you no matter what is happening. Like if something closes for construction, then I will tell you how to adjust your schedule. This includes Badlands National Park, but it also includes all the other really cool things in the area. So Mount Rushmore, Custer State Park, Wind Cave National Park, Jewel Cave, Deadwood, all of that stuff is included with the Dirt in My Shoes South Dakota itinerary. Okay, so you figured out where Badlands is and how to get here and what time of year you want to visit. Now let's talk about how many days you should plan for this park. In general, most people only need 1 full day for this park. You can do a lot in that amount of time. You can drive the whole park road. You can stop at all of the overlooks. You can do a couple of hikes. You can do all of that in 1 day. Now, there's an asterisk on that because you're really going to want to be in Badlands National Park either for sunrise or sunset. That's critical, I think, to the enjoyment of the park, especially if you're going during the summer when it can get really hot in the middle of the day. So there's 2 reasons, actually, that you'll want to be there either really early or really late. The first, as I mentioned, is to avoid those hotter temperatures in the summer. But the second, and what I think is even more important, is that the Badlands actually look more beautiful in the early morning or the later evening when the sun isn't as harsh. So when the sun beats down on these Badlands formations, it can really wash out the colors and just make the whole landscape look pretty blah, for lack of better words. It's just really hard to get good photos in the park during the middle of the day because everything just really gets harsh. It gets really white. The sun just bleaches out a lot of the coloring, and it just takes away from the experience, I think. So I always recommend to anyone that I tell, make sure you're there for an early morning or a later evening so that you can really see the Badlands in their full glory. If you want to just spend 1 day in the park, then you can easily do that. Just adjust your schedule so that you're there for one or the other. But that is typically why I will sometimes opt to spend a night camping in the park or at the park lodge or in one of the towns surrounding Badlands, just so that I can get back into the park during those peak photo taking hours when the Badlands just look really, really cool. I also like being there because it's quieter. You see a lot more wildlife typically. And so for me, the real love of Badlands comes from being there during those early morning hours or later evening hours when most people have left and I get to see the show basically all by myself. So then I think that begs the question next of where do you stay if you want to visit Badlands National Park? Okay, so let's look at a map of Badlands National Park together. What we have is, so here's the national park. This is the main part of the park that most people are going to want to see their first time in the park. There is another section down here that most people just don't even go to. This is kind of where you're going to find your main stuff. And Rapid City is over here in the corner. It's about an hour drive from Rapid City out here to the wall exit and to get into the park from there. So you have basically 3 main entrances to this main part. So you have the Pinnacles entrance, which comes down from Wall and pops you out right here at the Pinnacles Overlook, which is one of the most popular overlooks in the park. You've also got this one out here. It's pretty remote. There's not a whole lot right here, but you can pop down into the park from here. And this is where you're going to find the visitor center, the lodge, the campground, stuff like that. You'll also find the Notch Trail, which is really popular, right over here on this side of the park. And then you've got the interior entrance down here where just if you decide to come in, if you're coming in from the Black Hills and you don't want to go through Rapid City first, sometimes people will cut down in here, drive this road, go in through the interior entrance. And again, that's going to pop you right by the visitor center and the lodge. Really, it's not that big of a space, and so it doesn't really matter which entrance you use or which entrance you stay near if you're deciding to stay in this area. So when you're deciding where to stay for Badlands, really you can just stay in Rapid City and day trip out here pretty easily. So if you're someone who just doesn't want to have to pack up and get a new place, if you don't want to have to move hotels for all the different things you want to see in the Black Hills, Rapid City is a pretty good hub for just staying there and driving out to all the places you want to come, including Badlands National Park. If you do plan on staying a night or two in Badlands, or you're not wanting to drive from Rapid City to go see the park, if you're wanting to stay at Badlands National Park, then it really doesn't matter which entrance you use. The reason that you would want to stay out here, in my mind, is again, just so you can either hit those early morning hours or those sunset hours. You could stay for stargazing. The stars are really, really good out here. If you have just like some extra time to be at Badlands and you want to kind of slow down, you don't want to have to try to pack everything into one really full day, then I do think it's worth staying out in the national park for a night or two and then popping back over to the Black Hills area for the rest of the stuff. So a lot of times I will split my lodging. Sometimes I'll stay a night or two at Badlands and then I'll stay a night or two in like Keystone or Hill City if I want to be closer to Mount Rushmore and Custer State Park and stuff like that. Okay, so again, looking at the map, you've got the Cedar Pass Lodge right down here by the Visitor Center. That's also where the main campground is. So everything is kind of just right here. So if you can stay in the park, that's a really good option. Again, you're really close to the Notch Trail, and it only takes a minute to drive along this road and to see all the really cool sights. So it's a great location, easy to stay there if you want to. There's basically nothing up in here and not really much up in here as far as lodging is concerned. So I wouldn't probably even try to find something. You can find a couple of things down here in interior, not a whole lot of options, but there are some. If you're not staying in the park, my number one suggestion would be to come look up here in Wall. Wall has several good options. You'll find some hotels, you'll find some restaurants. Wall is where you will find the famous Wall Drug Store, which has, it's really hard to describe actually. It's just like this big building full of tons of shops and food and activities. There's a giant like animatronic T-Rex that blows fire or blows smoke. There's like a mini Mount Rushmore you can take your picture by, stuff like that. So Wall Drug is very popular. If you're in Badlands, you're going to want to stop in Wall Drug anyway, but the town of Wall, where Wall Drug is, does have some good lodging options. And again, if you're really feeling overwhelmed by just how to set up your lodging to see all of the really cool things in the Rapid City area, then my South Dakota itinerary on dirtandmyshoes.com will help immensely with that, because I walk you through several different options for just some of the best ways to set up your lodging to see everything. So if you need more help with that, go to dirtandmyshoes.com and pick up that South Dakota itinerary. Okay, so at this point, you're mostly done with making your arrangements for Badlands National Park. Now it's time to dig into the fun stuff, which is, what do you actually want to do while you're here? I have a couple of really fun articles about things to do in Badlands on Dirt in My Shoes. So there's 8 things you can't miss on your first visit. This one's going to hit just really those main things that you're definitely going to want to do. I've done pretty much everything in the park and then narrowed it down to this. So this is doable in a day. You can do all of these 8 things in one day. So that's a really good place to start. If you're looking for some extra activities and other ideas, then I do have a big post about the best things to do in Badlands, and it's broken up by category. So here's a couple categories here, but there are even more in the actual post. So I will link those below this video so that you can click over to those, but they're really helpful for deciding how to plan your time in the park. I mentioned at the beginning of this video that Badlands is really famous for its fossils. And so as you're out exploring in Badlands, just keep an eye out for things because like I said, everyday people find really cool things in Badlands National Park. So there's tons of fossils out there. You might be one of the lucky ones to find something like that. The park also has a fossil preparation lab that's in the main visitor center, and it's staffed by park rangers who work on the fossils. You can talk to them about the fossils. They have some displays, things like that. You can get a cool fossil junior ranger badge from those rangers, and so that's always a highlight as well. In addition to the fossil stuff, there are lots of beautiful overlooks. We like to just drive the park road and stop at the overlooks. while also looking for wildlife. Hopefully we get to see something like that. And then we'll do a couple of shorter hiking trails typically if we only have a day in the park. So trails like the Notch Trail or the Door Trail or Saddle Pass, that's a fun one too. So some really great options. Another really cool thing about Badlands that a lot of people don't know is that they have an open hike policy. And so you don't even have to stick to a trail. You can just start walking. You'll see a lot of people kind of climbing on the Badlands and exploring that way. And that is allowed in this park. One last thing that I want to say as you're trying to pick the activities that you want to do while you're at Badlands and as you're trying to structure your day, I mentioned the importance of being there for either sunrise or sunset. And so when I'm out sightseeing in the park, I'm typically putting the main park stuff that I really want to see kind of surrounding those morning hours or later afternoon and evening hours, just to make use of all that good lighting and the cooler temperatures if you're there in the summer. So what my day usually looks like is that I'm doing things in Badlands National Park early in the morning or later in the afternoon. And then the middle of the day is when I like to find something else to do. That's when, again, like the lighting is really harsh and it can be really hot and you're not probably going to see very much wildlife. And so it's just not really the ideal time to be out exploring Badlands. So looking again at the map, like I said, I'm going to focus my time kind of along this main park road in the morning and the afternoon, later afternoon, early evening. During the day, a couple of cool options. So you can go up to Wall and you can go to Wall Drug. Like I said earlier, that's something you're probably going to want to do anyway. And so I would hit that midday when it's just not as ideal to be in the park. Maybe go in for lunch and hang out for a few hours there. If you don't want to leave the park, this is a really good time to come down to the visitor center and go to that fossil preparation lab that I was talking about. You can stop in there, you can talk to the rangers, you can watch them work on the fossils. And so that's a really good option during the middle of the day if you're just not wanting to be out hiking, if it's too hot or if the lighting is bad. If you're a history buff, there's a really cool option that a lot of people don't know about, and that is the Minuteman Missile National Historic Site. There's 3 different parts of Minuteman Missile right here next to Badlands National Park, which is super cool. So you can go to the visitor center, you can stop in there. They have a display, really cool display actually, about the history surrounding the Minuteman missiles and learning more about what took place out here in the South Dakota Prairie. So that's really cool. If you're really into the Minuteman missile stuff and you really want to spend a good amount of time here, then you can take a ranger-led tour to Delta 1. That's like the control center for the missiles, but that does have to be booked in advance and it's a longer tour. So you'll have to plan that in a little bit better. If you're kind of interested and you don't want to go on a really long tour, I definitely recommend stopping up here at Delta 9 where you can actually see one of the missiles down in its silo. So pretty cool, but that's a really good way as well to kind of use up some of those midday hours to go and do something cool, to see something cool, and to not try to be in Badlands when it's just really hot and kind of miserable. After your day or two in Badlands, then you can pop over to the Black Hills and go see all the other really cool stuff in the area. So I recommend, of course, Mount Rushmore, but Custer State Park definitely deserves some time. Wind Cave or Jewel Cave are both really cool. You've got Crazy Horse, you've got Deadwood, lots of really cool options. Also, while you're in this area, you might want to go over to Devil's Tower National Monument, but there's just so much to do. You've got Sturgis and Spearfish and all the things. You could spend weeks here and still just scratch the surface, but hopefully this gives you a really good overview of what to expect for the Badlands leg of your South Dakota trip. If you need any additional help for Badlands National Park, head over to dirtandmyshoes.com, click on Badlands, and I've got a bunch of articles here to walk you through more in depth what I talked about in this video. This is also where you will find that South Dakota itinerary. If you're hoping to hit all the parks in the best way, I can help you do that in 4 to 5 days. So you can see everything with that itinerary. I'm so excited for you to visit Badlands National Park. I absolutely love this area of South Dakota. I think it is one of the best places to take a family vacation. We go there all the time. My kids love it. My husband and I love it. It's just a really fun adventure. So go out there, get some dirt in your shoes, and go to dirtinmyshoes.com if you need any more help planning your South Dakota adventure.